You know, when I did my thoughts on part 2 of Revelation, like I said, and I stick by it, it's a C plus decent improvement. Yes, I understand some of the moments that do take place in there, kind of they irk a lot of folks, old school, new school fans, on how they're done and how they represent characters and what those characters are supposed to stand for originally and stuff like that. But when I look at Revelation part 2, I look at something that is a good example of, even though it still has, stuff in there that doesn't sit well with a lot of fans, and that fans feel could have, easily been taken out or changed up to, really improve it and take it to a level that it should have been in the first place. I look at it as a prime example of taking something that is not very fondly remembered or endured or, embraced by the fan base, and improving on it as you get towards the end. And I look at that as a prime example as to what could have been with the Mecha Sally arc, what could have been done with the Metal Virus arc. These are two arcs that, in my opinion, could have been vastly improved as you got into the later portions of the story. Now, we know with the Mecha Sally arc, or the Mecha Sally / World Tour II Death Egg Mark II arc, we know that with that arc, unfortunately, it had to end prematurely due to legal issues. And one of the ways it was ended prematurely was the insertion of the Worlds Collide Mega Man Sonic crossover. And, that's one way, they got around, trying to pretty much bring everything to a close or to a closure so they can move on to the next steps, if you will, or at least move on to try to get away from, what was holding them back, if you will. They had to edit around and stuff like that. But Revelation, like I said, is a good example of what something like Mecha Sally, the Mecha Sally World Tour II Death Egg Mark II arc could have done. Even if it still ended up going in the direction that it did, as you got into the later portion of it, you could have really improved on it in a big, big way. You could have really done things with it that would have gotten it up to that C plus decent improvement level. Like I said before on camera, you could have easily gone with the merger trope. And because, honestly, if you want to create the tension and you want to put a twist in there that nobody would see coming, then, having Sally as her mecha self, weaponized mecha self, and Metal Sonic, merged together into, as I put it, basically maybe their interpretation of the Metal Overlord form, which is like a Naga-like form, if you will. And you have basically like pieces of Mecha Sally attached to pieces of metal. You have the red eyes of metal and encircled by the blue eyes of Mecha Sally, and then you have all 4 arms of them just swaying around on both sides, and they're speaking in one voice and referring to themselves as I instead of we. To me, that would have been a big, big twist that nobody would have seen coming. And it would have really, improved greatly, or if not decently in this case, the story would have picked it up and would have gotten people, as I mentioned in the video, like myself, invested more because it's a twist that we wouldn't have seen coming. And the reason I say this is, one of the things that kind of made it a decent improvement was the twist of having Evelyn, or Evil Lyn, be the female that took the sword of power away from Skeletor and became the female equivalent of He-Man. And that was a twist. That was a surprise because everybody thought, it's going to be Andrea, it's going to be Teela. Everybody else thought it was going to be one of them. They didn't expect, Evil Lyn or Evelyn to be the one that did it. And that was a twist. That was a twist that, again, I'll admit, the way it was done, the way it was structured, the way people called it out for, being done the way it was, I agree with. The way Evil Lyn in the story, stole the power from Skeletor, I'll admit, it wasn't probably the best, decision they could have made for a character like her to try to seize the power, usurp the person of the power that had it. Originally or first, I'll agree, it wasn't the best direction, but But despite the decision they did, whether it was a good decision or, as a majority of fans have said, it wasn't. It was a twist that nobody saw coming, and it did, whether we want to admit it or not, did grab our attention. It did get people talking like, whoa, we didn't expect this. Yeah, we may not like it. We may not like the way it was done, but it got our attention. And it kind of helped improve a little bit, very, decently, the story, in itself. Because, it was basically something that nobody saw coming, as far as twist goes. Maybe it was, like I said, maybe it was a very unpopular twist and decision to, a very unpopular twist to go with, but still was something nobody saw coming. And like I said, the way it was done, by Evil Lynn in story, yeah, it wasn't the best way to go with, but still it was a twist that caught people's attention. It got people talking. It got people to tune in and see, what the heck was going on and talk about it. So, and as well as probably see what the end result was going to be. So, to me, that right there is an example, as strange as it may sound to a lot of people, that to me is an example of, whether or not the twist is going to be, overly received positively or negatively or mixed. That right there is an example of keeping people invested, whether they want to be or not. It's one way of getting people's attention, whether they want to, watch it or not, or they want to have their attention gotten by it or not. That's one way of doing it. And to me, by going and doing that kind of a twist with the Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 arc that they were doing, with Sally and Metal merging together to become basically their interpretation of the Metal Overlord, like I said, with bits and pieces of them all together, like, Sally's hair kind of merged together, on top of, Evil's quills and stuff like that. And like I said, with the eyes and everything, and them speaking in one voice and saying I instead of we. To me, it would have been a good twist. It would have been a decent twist that would have at least improved it in some capacity. Another example, again, speaking of merging being a twist, is the Metal Virus arc. Again, going back to Revelation, there's a lot of things they did there. in the second half that decently improved the whole thing, the second half, to a C+ level over the D- disappointment of the first half. I mean, one of the things they improved on was, Teela finally accepting the fact that magic does need to exist. Yes, a lot of people didn't like the fact that she wanted to go her own way with it by saying we have the power instead of I. But still, it was having her character somewhat decently improved and accepting of what she is meant to be, is a step in the right direction, whether people want to admit it or not. I mean, I'll agree. The way she was portrayed at first, and maybe even at the beginning of the second half, I'll admit, wasn't the best, decision. Wasn't the best, narrative for her character. But still, towards the end, it was a vast improvement, or at least a decent improvement in, as far as development is concerned, whether you agree with it or you don't. But again, another good example of, Revelation being showing that it could be something that can improve from its disastrous first half, is Teela's character development, her acceptance of her destiny, even if she wants to go in her own directive with it. And to me, it shows you how well, a twist can be. Like I said, with Evil Lynn, the twist of her, being the one that gets the power, becomes the first He-Man female, if you will, with the power in Revelation instead of Andrea or Teela, that was a surprise. Again, a lot of people, and I'll agree with it. A lot of people said the way she did it was not the best way to do it, and I agree with that. But it was a twist. It was something nobody saw coming. And to me, if that twist would have been done with the Mecha Sally deal with her and Metal Sonic merging together and, becoming what I mentioned, that would have been a twist that would have gotten people's attention and got them invested, and even got those like myself that didn't want to check it out to probably check it out. it would have been a great direction to go with, or decision to go with, as far as surprise twist goes. And again, the merging trope would have been another great twist for the metal virus. Because again, because here's the thing, you wouldn't expect, like I say, Teela, the twist there, to say we have the power instead of, accepting her destiny as just being the new sorceress and saying I have the power and stuff like that. You wouldn't expect that. Nor would you have expected the twist at the end with Skeletor being, infected with the technovirus, and thus the cliffhanger of the Horde and Hordak showing up. That was a twist ending. Nobody saw that coming. And to me, a merger twist with, like I said, those that were infected by the Zombot virus, the goop, having that goop, engulf them, absorb them into like what looks like a droplet, and maybe you see them floating in that droplet, and that droplet flies towards, like, let's say the center or whatever direction the Zete have it go in, and it merges together into one big Zombot-like monster, and they're all speaking in unison, all the infected friends of Sonic in them, all speaking in unison and saying I instead of we, to me would have been a great twist. Another twist as well is the fact that maybe you have certain characters, important characters, if you will. Not saying none of them are important, but non-essential characters. Another good twist that would have got people's attention and got them invested, if you will, would have been is if the goop got so absorbed into a lot of the characters' skin that basically when Sonic and his companions try to fight them off, that when they take them down, one of the non-essential characters, instead of maybe having the goop fly off them or something of that effect, instead starts twitching as they're getting knocked down, and all of a sudden they just melt into a puddle of goop. Like the goop has infected them, so much that just getting defeated causes them to melt into a puddle of goop, and that's it. You essentially kill off that character, even if they're non-essential. That would be a twist right there that would have gotten people's attention to really be more invested in the metal virus and be less like, impatient for it to end. Because basically they'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't realize that they were going to make the metal virus scoop that, potent or that infective, if you will, towards the person or the character that's infected. Because now, as a reader, it gets you invested to see whether or not Sega would give the okay to be like, okay, let's take the very popular Vanilla, let's have her fight, and let's have her get knocked down to the point that the next thing you see is her melt into a puddle of goop. And that's it. She melts into a rabbit-shaped puddle of goop, and that's it. She's done. There's no bringing her back, or at least you think at that point. And then the twist at the end, the other twist that would get your attention is, would they allow it? And then all of a sudden you see all the goop that's, now just puddles and everything, all the Zombot affected friends or non-essential citizens that melted into puddles of goop because, they've been affected so much. All of a sudden you see it raise up, and basically the character that ended up in that situation is restored. And they're like, whoa, what happened? What occurred? And then you can do the reunion with the friends and family there, like Cream with Vanilla. You get the idea. So to me, when I look at Revelation, and I know, and again, like I said, I know this sounds very convoluted, strange to make a comparison and all that, but when I look at it, and you look at those twists, popular or not popular, whatever you want to call them, that, overall, the second half of Revelation is a great example, of how to decently improve something from a disastrous start to a decent improvement of a C+ level. And to me, with the twist they put in there, like I mentioned, of Evil Lynn getting the power, basically Teela accepting her destiny, but instead of saying I, it's we, and then, of course, the technovirus infecting Skeletor, and then the revelation of the Horde, Hordak showing up soon. To me, these are decent improvements. These are just examples of how to make, something into a decent improvement from its previous, appearance. And like I said, if they would have used the twist, in the Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 arc of having Mecha Sally weaponized and Metal Sonic merged together into a Metal Overlord-like being, the way I described it, that would have been a twist, because now you're like, okay, what's going to happen next? And it would have gotten even those like myself who were not invested in it, probably invested to open up the issue and be like, okay, what's going to happen in this issue? What are they going to do? How are they going to save her from this predicament? It would have got our attention. And the same, like I said, goes for the Metal Virus arc. 2 twists that they could have done to make it decently improved into a C+ level is you could have had the merging trope of all of them, of all the infected being, engulfed into like little blob droplets where maybe you see the character, but they all come together and they are floating in the middle of this merged zombot monster they become, and all speaking as one and referring to themselves as I instead of we. That would have been a huge twist that would have gotten people's attention. And maybe even those that were getting frustrated with the length of the story and wanted to see it end, it would have probably kept their attention and got them more intrigued and invested than before. And again, the other twist that I think they could have done, if Sega would have been okay with it, is they could have shown how potent and effective the virus became, to the point that when somebody that's infected gets knocked down, that instead of just being knocked out, all of a sudden they melt into a puddle of goop in the shape of the body, and they just remain there. They just remain there because now there's just a puddle of goop. And to me, that really would have gotten people intrigued, because then you'd be wondering, would Sega say, okay, we'll let you do this to this character and that character, as well. And you see maybe Vanilla, get knocked down, and all of a sudden, because she got infected, and all of a sudden you see her melt into a puddle of goop in the shape of her body, and she has to remain there. Again, these are twists, in my opinion, with the Metal Virus arc. They could have brought it up to a C+ and, improvement, and would have kept people that were getting fatigued with its length, invested and intrigued once again. And that is why, as strange as a comparison as this sounds, why Masters of the Universe Revelation is a good example of how to improve, from its beginning to close out its ending with a C+ and decent improvement with the twist that it gave us. Whether we like those twists or we didn't, it shows that, with those kind of twists, you can improve on something to a C+ average from a D- disappointment. But what do you guys think? What do you think about this? Do you think if they would have gone on it in a direction, do you think if the Mecha Sally World Tour the Mecha Sally World Tour 2 Death Egg Mark II arc, do you think if it would have given us that twist of Mecha Sally and Metal merging together in the form that I mentioned, and do you think it would have kept your interest to where maybe you would want to see what happens next? Or do you think maybe it would have been a desperate attempt to keep your attention? And do you think maybe if the Metal Virus would have done the merging trope too, as the way I described it, or even done the situation to where basically, the infected is so infected by the virus that instead of being knocked out, they turn into a puddle of goop in the shape of the body, and they have to remain there until the arc is over, and then basically the puddle shape of them that they've melted into rises up and restores them. Do you think that would have kept people's intrigue and invested in the story instead of being fatigued with its length? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Comment during the live chat. Like the video. Check me out at Teespring. Check out my Teespring store, I should say, for all your favorite merchandise needs there. Maybe for the holidays, you can get some gift ideas there. Also, check me out at BW Roses on Venmo. Not Venmo, but BW Roses on Vimo. Also, check me out at patreon.com/BW Roses. Check me out at BW Roses discussions on all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. Also, check me out at Venmo as well as on patreon.com/BW Roses. do donate there if you feel like it. So until next time, guys, I will talk to you later, and I'm out.